The first ship fell over the Pacific. At 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated, every satellite in orbit captured the same impossible image. A burning silver object tearing through Earth's atmosphere, leaving behind a trail of blue fire that split the night sky like a wound. Governments assumed it was a weapon. Religions called it prophecy. The internet called it aliens before the object even hit the ocean. By sunrise, 3 more ships had crashed. One in Siberia, one in the Sahara, and one directly into the forests of northern Canada. The world held its breath. Then the broadcasts began. Commander Elias Ward stood inside a frozen military hangar outside Whitehorse, staring at the thing that had crawled out of the wreckage. It was tall, thin, pale blue skin stretched across fragile-looking bones. For black eyes reflected the overhead lights. The alien looked terrified. Not dangerous. Terrified. "Can it understand us?" asked General Moreno quietly. The creature's breathing apparatus hissed weakly. Blood, silver, metallic blood, dripped onto the concrete floor. Elias knelt slowly. "My name is Elias," he said. The alien flinched. Then, in broken English, "Please don't send us back." The room went silent. Within 48 hours, humanity learned the truth. The aliens called themselves the Veiler. They weren't invaders. They were refugees. And something monstrous was hunting them. Across every communication channel on Earth, fragmented data poured from the damaged ships. Recordings of burning worlds, shattered fleets, entire planets consumed by biomechanical horrors known only as the Carrick's Dominion. A civilization that erased species. Not conquered. Erased. The Galactic Council, the mighty alliance of advanced races ruling thousands of systems, had already surrendered sectors to survive. The Veiler escaped with civilian transports. But during a blind jump through unstable space, 4 refugee vessels accidentally emerged near Earth. A forgotten world. A primitive world. A world no galactic map considered important. At first, the Galactic Council demanded the refugees be returned immediately. Their message arrived 3 days later. A glowing prism appeared over Geneva, broadcasting a hologram of a towering alien diplomat with gold-veined skin and eyes like liquid mercury. "We are the Sovereign Assembly," it declared. "The Veiler carry strategic data desired by the Carrick's Dominion. Their presence endangers your species." The diplomat paused. "You are not prepared for galactic war." General assemblies worldwide erupted into chaos. Some leaders wanted compliance. Others demanded asylum for the refugees. Protests exploded across every continent. And through all of it, Elias kept remembering the fear in the Veiler's eyes. "Please don't send us back." The turning point came from the child. A small Veiler girl named Senna. She couldn't have been older than 10 by human standards. When journalists were briefly allowed into the refugee shelter, one reporter asked her a simple question. "What happens if Earth refuses?" The child looked directly into the camera. "They will all die for us." "Who?" "Humans." "Why would humans do that?" Senna hesitated. Then she answered softly. "Because humans are the only species who still believe weak people deserve protection." The clip spread worldwide in under an hour. Something changed after that. Not politically. Emotionally. Humanity saw themselves in the refugees. Families fleeing war. Children sleeping in bunkers. Civilizations abandoned by powerful allies. Earth had seen that story before. Too many times. And for the first time in modern history, humanity agreed on something. The answer was no. Earth would not surrender the Veiler. Not even to save itself. The Galactic Assembly responded immediately. "You do not understand what approaches," the diplomat warned. "You mistake compassion for strength." Elias stood beside the UN Secretary-General during the official reply. The entire planet watched live. Human representatives had argued for 14 straight hours over the wording. In the end, Elias himself delivered the final sentence. "We understand perfectly," he said calmly. "And if your galaxy abandoned innocent people out of fear," he leaned closer to the camera, "then maybe your galaxy forgot what strength actually is." The transmission ended. For 6 terrifying days, nothing happened. Then Earth's deep space telescopes detected them. Thousands of ships, moving toward the solar system. The Carrick's Dominion had found Earth, and humanity had just volunteered for extinction. The Galactic Assembly expected Earth to collapse within hours. Every major civilization in known space had. The Carrick's Dominion was not an empire in the traditional sense. It was a living apocalypse, an endless swarm of biomechanical entities that consumed technology, flesh, and even atmosphere itself. Entire worlds became silent tombs after their arrival. The oldest races feared them. The strongest races fled them. And now the swarm was approaching Sol. Far beyond Pluto, the first human defense fleet assembled. If it could even be called a fleet. Most ships were retrofitted mining carriers, experimental orbital platforms, and hastily armed civilian transports welded together by desperate engineers working 20-hour shifts. The Valor watched in stunned silence. "This is their military," one whispered. Commander Elias Ward overheard the remark aboard the carrier Resolute. He smiled tiredly. "No," he said. "This is what happens when humans run out of time." The Valor scientist Lyran had spent decades studying galactic civilizations. By every measurable standard, humans were weak. Short lifespans. No unified planetary government. Primitive weapons. No neural combat networks. No quantum singularity drives. Humans still used kinetic ammunition. Kinetic ammunition. To the galaxy, that was practically prehistoric. And yet, Lyran could not understand them. The humans laughed while preparing for extinction. They shared food with frightened refugees before feeding themselves. Civilian factories converted into shipyards overnight. Children sent handwritten letters to soldiers heading into space. One note remained pinned above Elias's station. "If the monsters come, punch them in the face for me. Lucy, age 8. Lyran stared at it for several minutes. "Why display this?" he finally asked. Elias checked the ammunition feed on his rifle. "Because fear spreads fast," he answered. "But courage spreads faster." The Carracks arrived 3 days later. Nothing could have prepared humanity for the sight. The enemy ships looked alive. Gigantic black structures twisted like skeletons wrapped in flesh. Veins of crimson light pulsed across their surfaces. Some ships were the size of cities. Others were larger than moons. And behind them came millions more. Earth's sensors struggled to count them. Silence consumed every command deck. Then the Carracks transmitted a message. Not words. Screams. Billions of overlapping screams. Recorded from extinct civilizations. Psychological warfare. Several human operators broke down instantly. Others vomited. One officer shot himself before the transmission ended. The Valor trembled in horror. "This is how they begin," Lyran whispered. Elias looked at the tactical display. Then calmly asked, "Can they bleed?" Lyran blinked. "What? You heard me." The alien stared at him in disbelief. "These are planet killers." Elias loaded a magazine into his rifle with a sharp click. So were the Nazis. The battle for Pluto lasted 17 minutes. Humanity lost 83 ships. But the Carracks lost one. Just one. And the galaxy was stunned. Because no one had killed a Carracks vessel in over 2 centuries. The kill wasn't elegant. Human pilots overloaded fusion engines and rammed directly into the enemy formation. Primitive. Suicidal. Effective. The explosion tore a Carracks warship apart from the inside. Galactic observers watching remotely were horrified. Humans used themselves as weapons. The assembly had spent centuries preserving military assets and minimizing casualties. Humanity weaponized sacrifice itself. And suddenly the galaxy understood something terrifying. Humans fought differently. On Earth, celebrations erupted despite catastrophic losses. Not because humanity was winning, but because the Carracks could die. For the first time in generations, hope existed. The slogan spread across every military channel within hours. If it bleeds, we can kill it. Factories accelerated production. Retired veterans re-enlisted. Even rival nations suspended conflicts to contribute forces. Humanity had found its most dangerous state. United. But the Carracks adapted quickly. They always did. By the second assault, they bypassed Earth's outer defenses entirely. Black spores rained into the atmosphere. Cities began dying overnight. The spores consumed metal, water, organic tissue, everything. Entire regions went dark. Screams filled emergency broadcasts. Then came the horrifying realization. The invasion fleet was only the beginning. The real Carracks weapon was infection. And Earth was already contaminated. As panic spread, Elias received an emergency transmission from Luna Command. The voice on the other side shook violently. "Commander, there's something you need to see." Behind the officer, through reinforced glass, Elias saw movement. A dead human soldier slowly rising back to its feet. Black veins pulsed beneath its skin. Its eyes glowed crimson. And when it opened its mouth, the Carracks screamed through it. "Return the refugees." Earth began dying from the inside. The infection spread faster than any virus in recorded history. Entire hospitals vanished overnight beneath living black growths. Cities sealed themselves off with walls and firestorms. Governments collapsed into emergency military rule as communication networks drowned beneath endless distress signals. The Carracks did not merely invade. They corrupted. They turned the dead into puppets, turned fear into contagion, turned humanity against itself. And still, Earth refused to surrender the Veiler. Commander Elias Ward walked through the ruins of Toronto in a sealed combat suit, rifle raised. Snow fell silently through shattered skyscrapers. The city was empty except for the infected. Former humans staggered through the streets with unnatural movements, veins glowing red beneath cracked skin. Some still wore police uniforms. Others clutched children's toys in rotting hands. The worst part was the voices. The infected still remembered fragments of themselves. "Help me. Please. It hurts." Then the Carrack's consciousness would surge through them again in violent shrieks. "Return the Veiler." A young Marine beside Elias froze. That one sounded like my sister." The infected burst from the shadows before anyone could react. Gunfire erupted. The Marine hesitated for half a second. That was enough. The creature tore through his throat. Elias killed it with 3 shots to the skull. Then silence returned. Only snow. Only breathing. Only guilt. Far above Earth, the Galactic Assembly watched with detached horror. The humans were losing. Every projection confirmed extinction within months. Yet the impossible part wasn't the resistance. It was the refugees. The Veiler had repeatedly offered to surrender themselves. Humanity refused every time. Assembly Speaker Threxel could not comprehend it. He addressed the emergency council aboard the station Ethon Prime. "They doom their species for strangers," he said. A reptilian delegate hissed sharply. "Primitive emotional instability." Another replied coldly. "No. Worse." The chamber fell silent. Finally Lyran, the Veiler scientist stationed with humanity, spoke through the holographic feed. "You all misunderstand them." Threxel narrowed his eyes. "Explain." Lyran hesitated, then quietly said, "Humans do not calculate morality." The chamber remained silent. They do not ask whether compassion is strategically beneficial. They do not measure mercy against survival odds. They protect people because they believe abandoning the helpless is a fate worse than death. A murmur spread through the council. Lyran looked exhausted. "And the terrifying thing," he whispered, "is that they actually mean it." The turning point came from a human weakness the galaxy had always mocked. Persistence. Humans adapted faster than the Carracks expected. Civilian gamers became drone pilots. Factory workers learned starship repair in weeks. Scientists weaponized pesticides against alien spores. Improvised flamethrowers proved devastating against infected biomass. The Carracks evolved. Humans evolved faster. Every defeat became data. Every death became instruction. And slowly, the swarm's advance began to stall. Then humanity made its most horrifying discovery. The Carracks were not truly alive. They were victims too. Deep beneath the ruins of a fallen station near Jupiter, Elias and his squad discovered a captured Carrack's organism chained inside a containment field. It looked nothing like the monsters from the battlefield. Small, fragile, almost childlike. Black tendrils pierced its body like parasitic roots. Lyran stared at the creature in disbelief. This is impossible." The organism lifted terrified eyes toward them. Then it spoke in broken English. "Please." Blood leaked from its mouth. "Kill us." The room went cold. Lyran scanned the parasite structures rapidly. His hands began shaking. "The Carracks aren't a species," he whispered. "They're infected." The truth shattered everything. Long ago, the original Carrack civilization had encountered something ancient buried between galaxies. A living intelligence. A cosmic parasite. It consumed consciousness itself. Civilizations didn't join the swarm willingly. They were absorbed. Every screaming voice inside Carrack's transmissions belonged to real victims still trapped within the collective mind. Billions of minds. Still awake. Still suffering. The Galactic Assembly had spent centuries trying to survive the swarm. Humanity became the first species to ask if the swarm could be saved. When Elias proposed a rescue operation instead of extermination, even human commanders thought he'd lost his mind. "We can barely survive as it is," General Moreno snapped. "We don't even know if saving them is possible." Elias looked at the infected creature trembling behind containment glass. Maybe not, he admitted. But if we stop seeing monsters, maybe they stop winning. Lyran stared at him. Every logical instinct told him humans were insane. And yet, for the first time in centuries, the galaxy had hope again. Not because humanity was stronger, but because humanity refused to become cruel. Even now, even after everything. Then Earth received a transmission from the heart of the swarm. Not screams this time. A single voice. Ancient. Cold. Curious. Humanity, it said. You are unlike the others. The stars themselves seemed to dim. You will either become our greatest enemy. A pause echoed across every ship and station. Or our final harvest. The galaxy had always measured power the same way. Bigger fleets. Older empires. Stronger technology. Humanity possessed none of those things. Yet 6 months into the war, the impossible had happened. The Carrick's advance had slowed. Not stopped, but slowed. And for the first time in 200 years, the swarm was retreating from contested systems. The Galactic Assembly could barely comprehend the reports. Humans lost cities and rebuilt them within weeks. They lost fleets and returned with more. They suffered horrors that shattered elite alien armies, and became angrier instead of surrendering. The galaxy had mistaken fragility for weakness. Humans broke constantly, but they kept moving anyway. Commander Elias Ward stood inside Lunar Command overlooking Earth. Half the planet glowed with fire. Orbital bombardments scarred continents in burning lines visible from space. Yet millions still fought below. Civilian militias, rescue teams, mechanics, teachers, farmers. The war had transformed humanity into something terrifyingly unified. Not through propaganda, through shared pain. Lyran approached quietly beside him. You haven't slept in 36 hours. Elias took another sip of terrible military coffee. Sleep is for people winning wars. The alien almost smiled. Almost. Then alarms erupted across the station. Every screen turned crimson. Incoming transmission. Priority Omega. The face that appeared wasn't human. Nor Valor. It was the ancient intelligence itself. The thing controlling the swarm. Its shape constantly shifted across the screen. Thousands of absorbed species flickering beneath translucent black skin. Billions of trapped souls. Watching. Screaming silently. We have studied you, it said. Its voice sounded like entire civilizations speaking together. You preserve weakness. You defend the doomed. You resist inevitability. Elias stepped toward the screen. Got a point. The entity tilted its head curiously. Yes. The stars behind it darkened. Your species suffers beautifully. Then the transmission ended. A second later, every deep space sensor in the solar system screamed warnings. The main swarm had arrived. Not thousands of ships. Millions. They eclipsed starlight itself. Even hardened soldiers froze at the sight. The final invasion had begun. The Assembly ordered immediate evacuation protocols. Abandon Earth. Preserve surviving populations. Standard galactic procedure. Humanity rejected it instantly. Because Earth wasn't just a planet. It was home. And humans had a long history of dying for home. The final battle for Earth began above Saturn. Thousands of human ships charged directly into the swarm, while alien observers watched in disbelief. There were no elegant formations. No pristine military doctrine. Human pilots painted insults on missiles. Played rock music over combat frequencies. Broadcast final messages to loved ones seconds before impact. And somehow, it worked. Human unpredictability shattered Carrick's tactical calculations. Civilian engineers turned cargo freighters into bomb ships. Mining lasers became anti-fleet weapons. One captain rammed an entire asteroid into a swarm carrier while shouting, "Welcome to the Sol system." The clip spread through Allied networks instantly. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy laughed during a war, and fear began changing sides. But humanity still couldn't win. Not conventionally. The swarm was too vast, too endless. Then Lyran made a discovery hidden inside captured Carrick's biology. The parasite controlling the collective consciousness had a central neural nexus. A living core. Destroy the core, and every absorbed mind might finally be released. There was only one problem. The nexus rested inside the largest structure ever detected. A living fortress larger than Earth's moon. At the center of the swarm. A suicide mission. Elias volunteered before anyone else could speak. General Moreno slammed her fist against the table. You will not survive. Probably not. You're asking people to fly into hell itself. Elias looked around the room quietly. People already are. Silence followed. Then, slowly, others stood beside him. Pilots, Marines, engineers, even Valor refugees. Not because they believed they would live. Because they believed someone had to try. Hours before departure, Senna, the young Valor girl, found Elias alone in the launch bay. You're scared, she said softly. Elias laughed weakly. Terrified. Then why go? He looked toward Earth hanging in the distance. Because children deserved honest answers. Because being brave doesn't mean you aren't afraid, he said. It means something matters more. Senna hugged him tightly. Alien. Human. It no longer mattered. As the strike fleet launched toward the heart of the swarm, the Galactic Assembly watched in silence. For centuries they believed survival required sacrificing compassion. Humanity had proven the opposite. And deep across the stars, other species were beginning to rise again. Because one small, primitive world had reminded the galaxy what courage looked like. The strike fleet disappeared into darkness. Hundreds of ships. Most would never return. Ahead of them stretched the living nightmare at the center of the swarm, the Nexus. A black structure so enormous it bent gravity around itself. Veins of crimson energy pulsed across its surface like a heartbeat large enough to swallow worlds. And inside it, billions of trapped minds screamed in eternal agony. Commander Elias Ward stared through the cockpit glass as alarms echoed across the Resolute. This is insane, muttered the pilot beside him. Elias checked his rifle one last time. Yeah, he answered. Sounds human. The swarm descended immediately. Tendrils of living metal ripped through the strike formation. Ships exploded in waves of white fire. Pilots screamed across open comms. Left flank collapsing. We're boarded. Tell my son. Static. Gone. But the fleet kept moving. Every destroyed ship opened paths for the next. Every sacrifice bought seconds. And seconds were everything. Lyran coordinated targeting systems from the command deck, hands trembling over holographic controls. He had once believed humans primitive, emotionally unstable, militarily reckless. Now he watched human volunteers steer burning ships directly into enemy fortresses while laughing through tears. The galaxy had evolved beyond fear. Humans evolved through it. That was the difference. The Resolute breached the Nexus outer shell at 4:42 Universal Time Coordinated. The impact shattered half the ship. Elias and the surviving Marines crashed into a corridor made of living flesh and metal. The walls moved, breathing, whispering. Faces emerged briefly from the organic surfaces. Trapped consciousnesses begging silently for release before dissolving again into the walls. One Marine broke down sobbing. Another started praying. Elias kept walking. Because if he stopped, he might never move again. At the center of the Nexus, they finally found it. The parasite. Not massive. Not godlike. Small. A trembling black organism suspended within a sphere of pulsing light. It looked almost fragile. And surrounding it were countless spectral figures trapped inside translucent membranes. Victims. Entire civilizations. Still alive somehow. The parasite turned toward Elias. Then it spoke directly into his mind. Why do you resist? Elias nearly collapsed from the pressure. Images flooded him. Dead galaxies. Collapsed stars. Species erased across millions of years. The parasite wasn't evil in any human sense. It was hungry. Ancient beyond comprehension. You could join us, it whispered. No more pain. No more death. One mind forever. Elias looked at the imprisoned souls surrounding him. Some still reaching desperately toward freedom. No, he whispered back. The parasite pulsed curiously. Why? And humanity answered through him. Because people deserve to be themselves. Outside the Nexus, Earth's remaining fleets made their final stand. The sky above the planet burned. Cities watched the battle like the end of creation itself. Then something impossible happened. Alien ships arrived. Thousands of them. Then tens of thousands more. Species that had hidden from the swarm for centuries suddenly entered the fight. The Assembly. Independent worlds. Refugee fleets. Former enemies. All charging together behind a single transmission spreading across the galaxy. If humans can stand, so can we. Inside the Nexus, Elias armed the core charges. 30 seconds. The parasite sensed what was happening instantly. The walls convulsed violently. Screams shook reality itself. You would destroy billions. Elias stared at the trapped souls. No, he said quietly. I'm setting them free. The parasite lunged. A marine threw himself into its path. Then another. And another. Humans buying time with their bodies. As they always had. 10 seconds. Lyron's voice crackled through comms. Elias, there's no escape route. He smiled faintly. Figured. You'll die. Yeah. Silence. Then the alien's voice broke emotionally. Why are humans like this? Elias looked at the countdown. Then at the imprisoned faces around him. And finally understood the answer himself. Because humans knew what suffering felt like. And once you truly understood suffering, you could never ignore it again. Tell Senna something for me, he said softly. What? That humanity kept its promise. The explosion was seen across the solar system. A sun blooming inside darkness. The nexus shattered. The parasite screamed for the first time in its existence. Then silence. Absolute silence. Across every battlefield, Carrick's ships stopped moving instantly. One by one, they powered down. And from millions of liberated vessels, voices began speaking. Confused. Afraid. Free. The swarm was over. Months later, the Galactic Assembly gathered above Earth. Not as rulers. As survivors. A memorial stretched across orbit. Millions of lights representing the dead. At its center stood a simple inscription dedicated to humanity. Not the strongest species. Not the oldest. Not the most advanced. Just the species that refused to abandon strangers. Senna stood beside the memorial quietly. Do you think he was afraid? She asked Lyron. The scientist looked toward Earth below. Yes, he answered softly. Terrified. Then why did he go? Lyron smiled sadly. Because humans believe some lives are worth protecting, even if the cost is everything. Far beyond the stars, liberated civilizations began rebuilding. And throughout the galaxy, humanity earned a new reputation. Not weak, not primitive, but dangerous in a way no empire had ever predicted. Because when humanity chose compassion, they became unstoppable.